My name is Jeff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies, and at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me on my journey to profit from the hobby we all love. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Sports Card Investor. I'm Jeff Wilson. Can you believe that we are just days away, just a few days away from the NFL season starting? I am ready for some football, and I hope you are too. And this NFL season is going to be a lot of fun. There's some really good storylines going into this season. You know, can Kansas City continue their momentum? Can Patrick Mahomes continue playing at such a high level? And will they break through this year and perhaps get to the Super Bowl? That's going to be fun to watch. Also, on the opposite side of things, Oakland. Oh my gosh, do they look like a dumpster fire right now? Are they going to get it together? What's going to go on with Antonio Brown this year? That's going to be fun to watch. How about Indianapolis? How is Indy going to bounce back after the loss of their star quarterback, Andrew Luck? That's going to be fascinating to watch. Can Jacoby Brissett take the next step? What about the Jets? A lot of people think the Jets are going to have momentum this year, that they're going to build this year, that Sam Darnold is going to have a breakthrough year. Can that happen? Will we see the Jets become a premier franchise in the NFL? And then finally, is this the year that Tom Brady finally starts to come back down to earth, look human, and sees his career begin to drop off? Does that happen this year? Or does he continue to be Superman and takes the Patriots to another Super Bowl? Those are just some of the storylines, some of the ones that I'm more fascinated in, but there are so many good storylines this year. And as a sports card investor, this time of the year, right before football season starts and in the early stages of football season, this is a fun time of the year, because this is your opportunity to buy cards and watch what those cards are going to do over the course of the season. And today, we are going to be talking about some cards that I would consider investing in for this season. Some cards that I think could have some real positive momentum and see price increases over the course of the season. And we're going to talk about that today. You know, I think collecting sports cards is similar to fantasy football, but is actually a superior form of fantasy football. I'm sure many of you have already, drafted fantasy football teams and have set lineups, but why not buy sports cards of some of those guys who you think are going to have, really good years this year, and see how they appreciate over the course of the season? And I'm excited to talk about some of those guys. Now, I did do an episode a couple episodes ago comparing fantasy football rankings, fantasy football preseason rankings, to the value of sports cards. And what I found was that there's not a great correlation. Players who are ranked high in the fantasy rankings at the beginning of the year will not necessarily see their football cards go up over the course of the season. And the reason why is because fantasy rankings are completely an imperfect science. And, there were as many, in the top 12 of last year's fantasy rankings, there were a number of guys who didn't pan out at all over the course of the season, who had injury issues, or who just had a really bad season, or their team did really, really poorly, so their card prices didn't go anywhere. So there really is not a correlation between preseason fantasy rankings and how those guys might, their card prices might be at the end of the year, because of the fact that, it's hard to predict their performance. But where I did find a bit of correlation was for the teams that were expected to do well, that were expected to have positive momentum, and then did do well. The teams that had deep playoff runs last year, the players on those teams were the players who saw a lot of increase in their card values over the course of the season last year. And it was true for players on the Patriots, it was true for players on the Saints, it was true for players on the Rams, and it was true for players on the Chiefs, who were the final four teams last year. Pretty consistently, the players on those teams saw their card prices go up over the course of last year. So I started thinking about the concept of momentum. Because when it comes to investing in cards, what you're really trying to do is buy players at a value who you think will gain some momentum in the market. And that likely means they're going to gain some momentum on the field as well or their team will gain some momentum and this player will kind of be along for the ride and benefit from the fact that the team has gained momentum. A lot of sports card investing is about predicting momentum. Predicting momentum is a key thing to do in order to see what sports cards are going to appreciate in the future. If you can predict momentum, then you can predict the next Patrick Mahomes, who had an incredible amount of momentum. And the reason for that is because people who are buying and selling sports cards, people want to buy the hot guy. They want to buy the card of the guy who is on the rise. And oftentimes, the guy who is on the rise is more important than the established star when it comes to prices going up. And evidence of that last year, Tom Brady, despite winning another Super Bowl, only saw his card prices go up like 5% or less over the course of the season, even though he won another Super Bowl. And that's because he had already been established. He didn't have new momentum. He just had existing great play as he's always had. But conversely, other players on the Patriots, like a Julian Edelman, saw his card prices, or a Sonny Michel, saw his card prices go up substantially over the course of the season because they had new momentum. They had new momentum going into the season. So what I wanted to look at today is what are the teams that are going to have new momentum this season, and then what players on those teams might you want to buy to take advantage of the new momentum that those teams are going to have. When I'm going through this in just a minute, a couple of things to note. First of all, when investing in football cards, I typically, for the long term, will only invest in quarterbacks. I think for the long term, quarterbacks are really the only cards that are likely to continue to hold a lot of value and appreciate. Plus, a lot less injury risk at the quarterback position, Andrew Luck aside. There's generally a lot less risk at the quarterback position than there is another position like a running back or a wide receiver. And defensive players typically don't do much when it comes to card prices. So quarterbacks is where I like to play. However, if you are investing just for one season, if you are investing to see appreciation over the course of 1 year, looking at running backs, looking at wide receivers is perfectly fine, because over the course of one season, those guys will go up. We saw that last year. I mentioned Edelman. His cards went up substantially. Sonny Michel. We also saw that with guys like Michael Thomas and even some veterans like Julio Jones. Their card prices went up considerably over the course of the year. So for a one season buy and sell, I think it's fine to look at running backs and wide receivers. For longer term, I would look at quarterbacks. The other thing that I would be cautious of is buying any rookie cards right now. I would not buy any rookie cards of the star players right now. You might be able to find some good values, and I've done some previous episodes on some lesser priced rookie cards that could be good values. But in terms of the star players, the Kyler Murrays, I would not buy Kyler Murray's card right now, even if you think they're going to have a great year and Kyler Murray is going to really be an up-and-coming quarterback. And the reason why is there's only a few card sets out right now that feature the rookie card players, and they all feature them in their college uniforms. Over the course of this year, there will be more and more cards released of those same players in NFL uniforms, and the card prices of the college uniforms and the early releases are all going to begin to drop, no matter how good the player does when those new cards come out. We saw it last year with Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's cards, actually, if you bought his cards before the season, if you bought his contenders draft cards before the season, they actually went down substantially during the season, even though his performance was great. He was one of the best players last year. And they went down simply because there was more and more cards of him being released that were his actual legitimate NFL jersey rookie cards. So stay away from rookie cards. So all of that said, who are the teams that are going to have momentum this year? How I looked at this was by taking right now what Las Vegas is projecting as the win-loss total for every NFL team. I looked at Vegas's win-loss projections for the 2019 season. If you were going to go out in Vegas and bet, these are the over-unders in win totals for the 2019 season. And then I compared it to how many games the teams actually won in 2018. And I found the teams with the biggest differences, the biggest expected gains from a win total from 2018 to 2019, because those are the teams that this year are going to appear that they are on the upswing. And when you have a team that appears to be on the upswing, the players on that team are likely going to see some value out of that, some appreciation out of that from the momentum that builds around the team. For evidence of this, look no further than the Cleveland Browns last year. The Cleveland Browns players last year saw a good amount of appreciation in their card values because of the fact that everybody suddenly felt like the Browns had momentum and the Browns were a fun team to watch. So the number one team this year with a difference between their projected win total this year and their actual win total last year, the San Francisco 49ers. This year projected at 8 wins, last year only 4 wins, so a +4 differential in projected win total. What this tells me, this could actually be the time that Jimmy Garoppolo does something and his card prices go up. You know, everyone was really excited about him a year ago and it didn't pan out, but this year could actually be the year for Jimmy Garoppolo. And if the 49ers are able to get to 8 wins or higher, you could see Jimmy Garoppolo's prices begin to build as people sense momentum. Another player you could look at on that team is George Kittle. He's the tight end. He's a younger player. And a lot of people are expecting big things out of him. They're expecting him to become one of the dominant tight ends in the game. So possibly you could see some appreciation from George Kittle. Typically, the tight ends don't go up as much, certainly not as much as quarterbacks and often not as much as a running back or a wide receiver. But nonetheless, if he proves that he could be a really good tight end, you could see some appreciation for him. The second team with the highest expected win total this year over last year, the New York Jets. And this is good news for Sam Darnold investors, and there are a lot of them out there. Sam Darnold has seen his card prices raise quite a bit this summer because people have been anticipating the Jets being better. And a lot of people are anticipating Sam Darnold having a breakout year this year. If you are holding Sam Darnold cards, this could be a really good year for you. Let's hope so. The other player on the Jets I might look at is Le'Veon Bell. You know, Le'Veon Bell's cards last year came down as he held out the entire year. So perhaps you could get a little bit of value on Le'Veon Bell if he comes out this year and is as good as he used to be for Pittsburgh. And if the Jets as a team have a lot of momentum and look like they're building towards a playoff run either this year or in future years. The third team, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are expected to win 9 games this year. Last year, they only won 6 games. Now, I would probably not look to Aaron Rodgers because much like Tom Brady last year, who did not appreciate at all in card values, despite the fact that he won another Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers is probably in a similar boat. You know, he's already won Super Bowls. He's already established. You know, the team gaining some momentum this year is not going to help his card values as much as it would with some other players on the team. But how about a Devontae Adams? You know, can he really live up to being that top 5 wide receiver in the league that people think he can be? Or maybe one of the lesser known receivers on the team who you think could have a breakout year this year and become a favorite target for Aaron Rodgers. Or maybe Aaron Jones, the running back. Maybe Aaron Jones solidifies himself as a true, you know, top 10 running back for Green Bay. Perhaps he could see some appreciation if Green Bay gains momentum this year and makes their way into the playoffs. The number 4 team on the list, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like the Packers, they're expected to win 3 more games this year than they did last year. They're expected to win 8 this year. Only won 5 last year. Could this be the year that Leonard Fournette has a big comeback and really cements himself as a top running back? There was so much hype around that guy as a rookie, and he showed flashes of it. But then he kind of became a little bit of a head case, I guess. I don't know, had some disputes with the team. Has had some issues, some injuries, and never really has shown his full potential yet. If he comes out and shows his full potential this year, and if Jacksonville appears to be a team on the rise and starts to march towards a playoff run, Leonard Fournette's card prices could really go back up again. So he's a guy I would watch. Nick Foles, can he cement himself as a top quarterback for another team? You know, he won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. Can he now lead Jacksonville on a run? And then a lesser known guy, but a guy who some analysts are really high on, D.D. Westbrook. wide receiver for Jacksonville, D.D. Westbrook. He seems to have a really good connection with Nick Foles. They connected a lot in the preseason. Could D.D. Westbrook emerge as a top 10 wide receiver this year? And will his card prices benefit, also as Jacksonville makes a nice run this year? Three other teams to look at this year. These teams are all expected to win 2 more games than they did last year. So not the same leap as the teams I just mentioned, but still a good leap and still positive momentum. The first being the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cleveland Browns already saw a big leap last year. So I'm a little bit weary of investing in the Browns players because you've already seen guys like Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb, go up quite a bit. But if the Browns make a significant playoff run this year, you could see them continue to go further. And then, of course, you've also got Odell Beckham, who is a fan favorite and whose card prices always they're always high because he's a fan favorite no matter what team he's on. Even with the Giants last year, when the Giants were bad, Odell's prices went up over the course of the season, even though the Giants were bad last year. So, Odell's already got high card prices, but if the Browns deliver, it could potentially drive his card prices even higher. The Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders are a bit of a dumpster fire, but they were a real dumpster fire last year, and Vegas thinks they're going to be a little bit less of a dumpster fire this year, and they're going to have some momentum. For Oakland, I would look potentially to Josh Jacobs, the running back. He could be a top running back in the league this year, and Oakland could be running it a lot to him. This scares me to say this, but Antonio Brown could actually be potentially a good investment this year. Antonio Brown's card prices dropped a lot last year when he had all the drama last year with the Steelers, and the Steelers did not perform last year. His card prices dropped a lot. So his card prices are not as high as they have been in the past. Could he have a really good connection with Derek Carr? Derek Carr, by the way, another guy who could potentially benefit if the Raiders show some momentum. Could that happen this year? I don't know. I'm a little bit scared of the Raiders, but there is the chance that they will gain some momentum. And then, of course, they will soon be moving to Las Vegas, which potentially that move alone and the publicity they'll get from that could help bump some of their star players up a little bit further. Finally, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, awful team last year, only 3 wins. This year, they're expected to do a little bit better with 5 wins. Still not a great team, but I will say that David Johnson's card prices last year really, really tanked. They went way down. He dropped his card prices by the end of the year, I think were less than half of what they were at the beginning of the year. So with the emergence of Kyler Murray, whose cards I would not buy right now because I'd wait till later in the year to buy some of his rookie cards potentially. But with Kyler Murray leading the way, could Arizona get some momentum? And if they do, could other players on that team like David Johnson or Christian Kirk, a popular young wide receiver, could either of them see their card prices go up? Potentially so. So those are some of the teams and some of the players who have the opportunity to gain real momentum this year. And if you're looking to pick up some cards right before the season starts with the idea that these cards could appreciate over the course of the season, those guys I just mentioned are some of the guys I would be looking at picking up now. Now, let me give you a few teams that I would be a little bit scared of buying guys on, because these are the teams that Vegas predicts are going to drop back in their win total this year. The team that it predicts will most significantly drop back is the Chicago Bears. Last year they won 12. This year Vegas thinks they're only going to win 9. So that would be bad news potentially if you are holding a bunch of Mitch Trubisky cards or other players on the Bears. I'd be a little bit weary of buying Bears players going into this season. The Dolphins. Vegas thinks the Dolphins are going to drop back from 7 wins to only 4.5 wins this year. The Colts, of course, naturally the Colts, right? Vegas thinks they're going to drop back from 10 to 7.5. A lot of that is obviously just simply due to Andrew Luck and the impact that losing him has. The Houston Texans. Vegas thinks they're going to drop from 11 wins back to 8.5 wins. I hate to see that because I'm a big fan of Deshaun Watson. But the Texans, if that happens, Deshaun's cards are going to go down quite a bit. So I would be weary of the Texans this year. And two of the teams that made it really deep last year, the Saints and the Rams. Vegas thinks the Saints and the Rams are both going to come back down to earth a bit. Both teams won 13 games last year. Vegas thinks both the Saints and the Rams are only going to win 10.5 this year. And since they already had deep playoff runs last year, the card prices of the players on those teams already saw a lot of appreciation last year. So I would be staying away from buying any Saints or Rams players right now. And then finally, the Chargers. Vegas thinks the Chargers are going to drop back a little bit as well. So I would be weary of the Chargers potentially as an investment. So those are the teams and the players that I am looking at, and also the teams that I am thinking about avoiding as I am buying cards this week going into the football season. I would love to hear from you. Who are you buying? Do you think that some of these predictions are right? Do you think that some of these predictions are wrong? Please let us know. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You can join our free Discord chat server where we now have over 100 people who have joined and who are talking about sports card investing every day. It's totally free to join. The link to join is in the show notes of this show, or you can go to my website, sportscardinvestor.com, and it is right in the top menu bar. Also, please leave comments on this episode if you're watching on YouTube and tell us what you think of these projections. I'd also love to hear from you as to what future episodes you want us to create. I've got some good ones that I'm working on. I'm working on some baseball ones. I'm working on one on population reports. But I'd love to hear from you what other episodes you think we should create. So please leave me those comments. And while you're at it, if you don't mind, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the little bell icon so it notifies you when I have new episodes coming out, because I've got great ones coming out soon. And then also give me a rating on Apple Podcasts. That is always helpful to get more and more people finding out about this show. And as more and more people find out about this show, that creates more discussion and more interest around sports card investing, which is a good thing for all of us. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Sports Card Investor, and enjoy what should be a really fun football season. See you again soon.